morning. I feel like the special speaker this morning and just going to sneak out after the service, but beautiful worship. Thank you, Day, so much. Loved the video of the children. I found myself last week crawling in Nemo's cave back there and got some photos, so I loved that. I resonated with that. I'm not good at saying goodbye, so we'll see you later. Well, let's all get together for a party, all right, after our last breath here on earth, shall we? Amen? Okay, so that's enough goodbyes, all right? We're in the throes of the Olympics. It was about 8 years ago. Sana and I decided, let's get TV. It was really me that did it. I wanted to see the Olympics, and then we just experienced it again. And the dedication and the commitment for the Olympic athletes is relentless and remarkable. They train not just because they love the sport, but that they live the sport. It becomes who they are. It resonates with them. According to Forbes, it's common for athletes to spend 4 to 8 years. And these are the best of the best of the best before they even make it to the Olympics, so that they can pursue an incredible milestone. The commitment varies. Simone Biles, for instance, she spends about 32 hours a week in preparation. And those of us that saw the gymnastics and the falls, I can't even imagine how they overcome that. And then there's this little gentleman a few years ago by the name of Phelps. Do you remember him? Nod your heads. And he would spend about 4 to 6 hours every day in the pool. And then he spent a couple hours on dry ground. That's what he called it, exercising. And the reality was they discovered that all Olympians spent at least 10,000 hours preparing to become experts in their field. But it's just not about physical training. Success at the Olympics demands proper sleep, a nutrition team, athletic trainers, those that kind of help fine-tune their skill sets. Behind every athlete is this vast network of community. We say that it takes, a village to raise a child, and it takes a village to send somebody to the Olympics. Now, I realize that we are all very proud parents, those of us that have children. That's certainly the case for Sada and I. And I remember it was around when Bryce was about 13 years of age. He began praying every night that he would be able to achieve something that was beyond, certainly beyond. We knew that when he was praying, it would take God himself to accomplish some of those goals. And I remember Bryce saying every night in prayer, I want to get bigger and stronger and faster. And we see that. And maybe some of you have children that are pursuing excellence in particular fields. A few years ago, I received this photo from Sean Yoon, and Sada and I weren't aware of it at all, but there's this incredible sports complex at this little school where Sean and Bryce went called West Point. And Sean sent this picture, and it was these athletes on this mural that kind of was the entrance in there. And it was then that for the first time we saw that our son was on that mural, and Sean Yoon sent that to us. And we thought that was pretty amazing. But a passionate pursuit like the Olympians starts somewhere and it begins to burn, and they become a victim of a passion. Have you ever wanted something so bad? And what would it take for you to accomplish that goal? Because a champion isn't made on the playing field or merely recognized there. Maybe you have a son or daughter who has accomplished some things. I just wanted to share the reality of our son's pursuit as we begin to talk about being passionate, a victim of a passion, and what that looks like.
I'm fragile.
Let's watch this video.
I feel pain. I hurt. I open my eyes.
That's our little boy right there.
I create. I conquer. I hold the power. I'm a thinker. I crave victory. I do not give up. I feel no fear. I fear no man. I'm an athlete, a warrior, an artist.
You like to to talk about the grind, but you don't really know what the grind's like. I know what the grind is like. I started from the bottom. I'm coming now. It's in view. You finally made it to the big leagues, and now you want to chill? Now you got the big head. Now you can't grind. You here now. You here now. You finally made it. And this is where you break up. This is where you start chilling. This is where you get comfortable. You made it now. You made it now. You in the big leagues now. They watching you now. This is where you make it permanent. Yeah, I saw it. Perfect. No, practice don't make perfect. Practice make permanent. You might come from privilege. Your daddy might hook you up with a car. He might know people. He might be able to get you a job. But you will not outwork me. Everybody want to be a beast. Everybody want to be a beast. And church, time to do what beasts do. And church, time to do what beasts do. Because real lions like to hunt. They love the process just as much as they love the prize. And some of y'all just want to score. You don't like the process. You're not in love with the process. If you will be a champion, if you will be a beast, you're going to have to go through something. Ain't nobody going to hand you nothing. Ain't nobody going to hand you no championship. Ain't nobody going to hand you no title.
You go after and you give it all you have. If you lose, at least you try, man. I failed. It's 10 times more of a man than someone said, what if? Because what if never went to the arena?
That's called courage. Now that's the stuff leaders should be made of.
You think something's wrong, maybe it's time to stop. No, it's time to move even further. Mentally, you must believe it before you physically start.
I choose to rise, not fall. I choose to live, not die.
The day will be that day. Not tomorrow, not next week, but right now, right here. Belief will change my world. History will remember me. I will define myself. I will never go out not knowing I've given everything I've got. Because who am I? I am the champion.
I choose to fight back.
I'm coming.
That last scene was at the national championships. Bryson set 2 world records at that event that was being filmed and brought through ESPN. I flew from Germany to be there, to be present for that. And he helped lead his team at West Point to its first national championship. I share this with you because we experienced someone's pursuit. Bryce started working out with me when he was 13 years of age, and then part of his story is that he was asked twice to be a part of the Olympic team and said, no, thank you, because that wasn't the glory that he was interested. But to be a victim of a passion takes incredible dedication and commitment. And many of you have pursued things at a particular level. This here was physical. But you can imagine it took an entire team and a group of people and the motivation and people there to help Bryce so that he wouldn't get injured and everything else, and the trainers. But what does it look like spiritually speaking when we pursue excellence in our faith? The Torah is the first 5 books of the Old Testament. And the Israelites, for them, it was life. It was known as the way. It was known as truth. Torah was central to life. And in the same way that Jesus and his teachings are central to the New Testament, the Torah and Moses and those words were central in the Old Testament. And when Jesus comes on the scene, he does not come to abolish the Torah or the law, but rather to fulfill it. He becomes the way, the truth, and the life in the flesh with sandals on his feet. You see, Jesus was Torah. And for thousands of years, people would have the Torah memorized. Could you imagine that? Word for word. And then those that would move to the second layer or level of education, they would have memorized from Genesis to Malachi. I can't even imagine that level of excellence. But in Numbers chapter 6, there's an interesting pursuit towards greatness. And I want to share that with you in the context of the Olympic Games that we've witnessed. The Nazirite, chapter 6 of Numbers. The Lord said to Moses, "Speak to the Israelites and say to them, if a man or a woman wants to make a special vow, a plea." You've ever heard that word before? To plea, a plea. It's a dedication to the Lord as a Nazirite. And the word is a complicated expression from a Hebrew word plea, a special plea, if you will, in the ancient Hebrew. And then in the book of Judges, chapter 13, verses 19, then Manoah took a young goat together with the grain offering and sacrificed it on the rock to the Lord. And the Lord did a plea, an amazing thing while Manoah and his wife watched. The Lord did a plea thing, an amazing, wondrous thing. In Psalm 77:11, we hear this word again. I will remember the deeds of the Lord. Yes, I will recognize and remember your miracles of long ago. I will remember your plea. If someone wants to make a wondrous vow, a miraculous vow, there were some Old Testament steps that one would need to make. Let's continue with Numbers chapter 6, verse 3. They must abstain from wine and other fermented drink, and must not drink vinegar made from wine or any other fermented drink. They must not drink the grape juice or anything that contains grapes or raisins. As long as they remain under the Nazirite vow, they must not eat anything that comes from the grapevine, not even the seeds or the skin. And during the entire period of the Nazirite vow, no razor may be used on their head. They must be holy until the period of their dedication to the Lord is over. They must not let their hair be cut. They must let their hair grow long. And throughout the period of their dedication to the Lord, the Nazirite must not go anywhere near a dead body. Even if their own father or mother or brother or sister dies, they must not make themselves ceremonially unclean on the account of the death, because the symbol of their dedication to God is on their head. And throughout the period of their dedication, they are consecrated to the Lord. So if somebody wants to do something spectacular, spiritually, wondrous, something miraculous, they would make this plea, and it starts with 3 things. No wine, no cutting of their hair, and not being around anybody that's dead. You can go to a wedding, though. And if you go to a wedding, how do you celebrate? Well, there's wine, because the central celebration around the Israelites had to do with wine. If you go to a Passover event, and we see Jesus at a Passover meal, we call that the Last Supper, the one that we know all too well. There's 4 cups of covenant, and they're filled with wine. For the Israelites, wine is central to your life. It's your social life, your physical life, your spiritual life. In this intentionally passionate plea, one cannot eat anything that comes from the grapevine, and yet wine is huge to so many aspects of a Jewish person's life. Wine is central to your social life, your religious life, to everything. And then number 2, no haircuts. This is an interesting thing, isn't it? No razor is to be put to the head. And during the entire process, no scissors can touch your body. You must be holy. And if there is a guy sitting next to you right now that has super long hair, They're just being obedient. Maybe that's what it is right now, I mean, we don't do the Nazirite vows, but nonetheless, let's have compassion for those with long hair, all right? I think that's great. But throughout the period of separation, you cannot go near a dead body. That won't be a problem for most of us, but some of us in the medical field or that are in hospice or palliative care, you're around death and dying. But the vow was offered voluntarily. Evidently, the Nazirite himself determined the length of the vow. Therefore, he decided how much he was willing to sacrifice. Yet after the vow was made, the requirements were very, very strict. Consider the 3 restrictions placed on the Nazirite. There's no wine. What a sacrifice. That would kind of exclude them from community, to separate themselves. There was no haircuts, and for this particular time, that would create a sense of shame if you weren't able to have a haircut. And then no dead bodies. What an incredible sense of sacrifice and separation that would be, to not be able to be around your loved ones and your family. Now remember, in the ancient Middle East, there was no urgent care, there was no Kaiser, there was no hospitals. This was before convalescent homes, nursing homes, places where the sick were placed. If you lived in a community, your family, your home was probably where people were born and where people die. That's still the case in many countries today. I think when I was young, my mom even told me that she had the privilege of, were you born at home? Yeah, that still happens, doesn't it? Yeah, it does. But death was a common occurrence. And so for you to be in the midst of this plea, you would have to separate yourself. Tremendous sacrifice. But let me show you just a couple pleas or vows that are described in biblical records. Samson was a mighty Jewish leader who waged wars against the Philistines. And before he was born, an angel of God told his parents that they would have a special child and should let his hair grow. His superhuman strength was proportionally equivalent to the length of his hair. And his mother was also cautioned not to drink wine or eat anything that was impure during her pregnancy. Ultimately, Samson's wife, Delilah, betrayed his secret to the Philistines, and they managed to overcome him. Samson died in a building full of Philistines, but not before he managed to crumble the entire building. Samuel, the great prophet and leader of the Jewish people, was Nazirite from birth. His mother Hannah had not initially been blessed with children and prayed with all of her heart at the tabernacle that God would give her a son, and then she gave birth to a son. If you will give your bondswoman a man-child, and I shall give him to the Lord all the days of his life, and no razor shall come upon his head. And Samuel went on to lead the people of Israel for the rest of his life, appointing King Saul and King David to lead the people of Israel. In Numbers 6:9, as we continue this fascinating account of a desperate, passionate plea, if someone dies suddenly in the Nazirite's presence, thus defiling the hair that symbolizes their dedication, they must shave their head on the 7th day, the day of their cleansing. Then on the 8th day, they must bring 2 doves or 2 young pigeons to the priest at the entrance of the tent of meetings. The priest is to offer one of the sin offerings and the other as a burnt offering to make atonement for the Nazirite because they sinned by being in the presence of the dead body. The same day they're to consecrate their head again. They must rededicate themselves to the Lord for the same period of dedication and must bring a year-old male lamb as a guilt offering. And the previous day, those days, however many days or weeks or months, none of that counts. They have to start all over. The previous days do not count because they became defiled during their period of dedication. So the question that you and I could honestly ask is, well, how long did these vows go for? And it seems scripturally and within some of the writings of antiquity, the time actually varied quite a bit. Here's just some examples. In the Mishnah, in Nazir 6, verse 3, this comes from a first century historian. Now, she, Bernice, dwelt then at Jerusalem in order to perform a vow which she had made to God. And for 30 days before, they are to offer their sacrifices, to abstain from wine, and to shave the hair on their head. So it looks like this was a 30-day vow, to be passionate, to see God's intervention happen in her life. Here's another one. Queen Helena had almost completed a 7-year vow when she was defiled, requiring her to start over. How's that? Get to the back of the line again. Wow, she had to start all over. Now, if you see her in heaven, you can do what I'm going to do. I'm going to say to her, bummer, but I'm glad you persevered, you know? Wow, 7 years, start over. So let's continue. Verse 13. Now, this is the law for the Nazirite. When the period of separation is over, he is to be brought to the entrance to the tent of meeting. And there he is to present his offering to the Lord, a year-old male lamb without defect for a burnt offering, a year-old ewe lamb without defect for a sin offering, a ram without defect for a fellowship offering, and together with their grain offerings and their drink offerings, and a basket of bread made without yeast, cakes made of fine flour mixed with oil, and wafers spread with oil. And the priest is to present them before the Lord and make the sin offering and the burnt offering. He is to present the basket of unleavened bread and is to sacrifice the ram as a fellowship offering to the Lord, together with its grain offering and drink offering. All of these offerings. What you and I don't see and don't know is that these animals were exceedingly rare, and the amount of offerings that were given were enormous. What we may lack to realize is that this is an unbelievably expensive list. Very few would have this much lying around. History tells us that the only way one could afford this is if all of your family and friends would play a part in your plea. You would need the help of others, and maybe your community would assist you in achieving this goal. But prior to this oath, you would have to sell maybe everything that you had. You would have to be set apart, be diligent, and sacrifice immensely. And most people just didn't have it, couldn't hardly find the things that were needed, and certainly could never afford it. Most people believed that no one could afford this vow without the help of a community. In addition to selling everything, they would have to have community come beside them and assist in their expenses. There seems to be a New Testament subplot that kind of brings this together, helps us to see it more clearly. Acts 21:23, there's this rabbi by the name of Paul. He's been traveling way outside of the Jewish world into the Greek world, and many are accepting the way of the Rabbi Jesus, that loved people unconditionally, accepted, never projecting shame and guilt. Many are believing in this level of love, and as they're preaching, Paul is hearing that people are ridiculing, saying they're not following the way of Torah. And in Acts 21:23, so do what we tell you, he says. There are 4 men with us who have made a plea, who have made a vow. Take these men, join in their purification rites, and pay their expenses so that they can have their heads shaved. Then everyone will know that there is no truth in these reports about you, but that you yourself are living in obedience to the Torah. And as for the Gentile believers, we have written to them our decision that they should abstain from food sacrificed to idols, from blood, and from the meat of strangled animals, and from sexual immorality. And the next day, Paul took the men and purified himself along with them. And then he went to the temple to give notice of the date when the days of purification would end, and the offering would be made for each of them, for the 4. you have these 4 guys, and they get to the end of their plea, of their vow, and they can't afford the final steps for completing the plea. 4 men get to the end of their vow, and Paul is encouraging everyone to pitch in so that they can complete their vow. Pay their expenses so that no one can argue that you are not living according to the Torah. So let's go back to Numbers chapter 6. Then at the entrance of the tent of meeting, the Nazirite must shave off the hair that he dedicated. He is to take the hair and to put it in the fire that is under the sacrifice of fellowship offering. After the Nazirite has shaved off his hair of dedication, the priest is to place his hands, this boiled shoulder of the ram. He takes it and a cake and this wafer from the basket, both made without yeast. And the priest shall wave them before the Lord as a wave offering, that they are holy and they belong to the priest, together with the breast that was waved and the thigh that was presented. After that, the Nazirite may drink no wine. This is the law of the Nazirite who vows his offering to the Lord in accordance with his separation. In addition to whatever else he can afford, he must fulfill the vow he has made according to the law of the Nazirite. So the final step that the person gets to do is to shave his hair at the temple, and then the priest places the hair in the fire. Now remember, you sold everything that you had to get to this point, and perhaps you had got others involved in the community to come together to be a part of this great plea because they too wanted to see you accomplish something great. You were so serious about this supernatural vow to God. So if someone walked into the temple and you smelled the burning of hair, instead of turning to your family and go, man, this stinks horribly, you would say something like this: smell the scent of passion. To be a victim of a passion can lead you to greatness. The smell of burnt hair is passion. It's a deep love for God. So why the severity? Why the sacrifice? Why the cost? Well, that answer is actually not found in the book of Numbers. But I wonder if people who struggled with things that they just couldn't get victory over in their own life, they would be so desperate. Maybe we call them besetting sins or addictions. And if you get to the point where you've tried everything, I've tried all of these things and nothing has given me the freedom that I need to break through. It was believed that the vow of the Nazirite is this whole person saying, I am willing to do everything and anything. I'm desperate for a breakthrough. And when it comes to a relationship with God, the question would be, how bad do you want it? What would you give up to be free? What sacrifice or level to achieve greatness? A Nazirite is denial. But we think of denial as bad, but for the vow, it's actually the beginning of freedom. Is there something in your life that you've been struggling with? Fear or food or addiction or bitterness or unforgiveness. God, I'm willing to give this up so that I can no longer struggle with this, but so that I can have that. I've tried everything and I want this. I wonder if people did this vow because there was an addiction or a besetting sin and they had tried everything and nothing worked. In the sport industry, we say no pain, no gain. If it causes you to stumble, cut it off. In counseling, we oftentimes teach that it takes 14 days to stop a habit and then 14 days to begin a habit. What are you willing to give up so that you can have this, something that takes so much more and brings you so much more freedom? Maybe some of this is addiction, this hurt that I carry around. I can't seem to get rid of it. I'm afraid and I'm desperate, God, for your help, for a breakthrough. Maybe someone wronged you so bad that you haven't been able to forgive them. You haven't been able to be set free. Maybe it's an issue of how bad do you want it? What would you give up to be free, to be closer to God, to be closer more than anything? And the Nazirite vow is driven by denial. You deny yourself of this so that something so much bigger can be achieved, accomplished, that is wanted. We're driven by desire. Your desire for God to show up in wondrous, supernatural ways. I pursue a plea. Is there something you want God's help with? Maybe you have this addiction that you've never told anyone about, and it's killing you, and you thought you had it managed, and the reality is it's controlling you. How bad do you want your marriage to be amazing? How bad do you want it? What are you willing to let go of? What sacrifice are you willing to take? Are you willing to give up that so that you can have this? And so often we think of denial, especially within religion, as a bad thing. But rarely do we say, I don't do this because I want this. So often people denote their faith by what it keeps them from rather than what it protects them from, so that you can have this. No longer is my faith determined by what I don't do. I choose to deny myself so that I can have something deeper, more significant, more meaningful. When we smell burnt hair, if you've ever smelled burnt hair, it's like eating a piece of cake with a bad egg in it. It is not beautiful. But when we smell burnt hair, it's the smell of passion. You've tried everything, and you say to God, I'm willing to give this up so that I can live in and through this. Your habits are killing you. Your marriage isn't where you want it to be. You have a besetting sin that's killing you. Maybe you've tried everything, but only you can answer that. Our God has provided a way of redemption. Jesus was a Nazirite. And I believe he fulfilled the Nazirite vow on our behalf. So let me close with this priestly blessing that's found in the very same chapter in Numbers. The Lord said to Moses, tell Aaron and his sons, this is how you're to bless the Israelites. Say to them, man, my children heard this 1,000 times at home. The Lord bless you and keep you. The Lord make his face shine upon you and be gracious to you. The Lord turn his face toward you and give you peace. A passionate plea, a dedication unto the Lord. We're seeing great accomplishments on the playing field in the Olympics. I remember for us being just transparent within our own home, praying over our children, pleading the blood of Christ over them, knowing that my son, and we were present for most of his athletic endeavors, wouldn't play a football game unless I laid my hands on him and blessed him. There would be people in the stands. He was one of the leaders of the team. He wouldn't do a wrestling match unless I blessed him and laid his. They would wait until that happened because that was of great value. It was Bryson's plea to the Lord to make him bigger, faster, stronger in your spiritual life. Are you ready to dig in? Make a plea to the Lord, and may the Lord's face shine upon you and be gracious unto you. Amen? Amen. God bless you. Love you guys.